Hello, greetings from Budapest, Hungary. This is officially my second destination as a digital nomad. And now that I'm here, I'm trying to take it upon myself to challenge myself and actually post consistently about it. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, today was my first full day. Getting here was kind of an adventure in and of itself. As we all know, travel and flights have been getting more and more expensive. Before this, I was in Seattle visiting family, and when I was planning this trip, all of the flights, like just one way from Seattle to Budapest, were at least like going through Google Flights and booking like the whole trip in one go, were over $1,000 one way, which is ridiculous. So I did a little research, had to employ a couple of travel hacks, but I found that one of the cheapest places in North America to fly into Europe from was Cancun. So I went from Seattle to Cancun, spent a night in Cancun, which was an adventure and a whole nother vlog in and of itself, that pending. And then from Cancun to London, and from London to Budapest. And man, just to note for anybody planning any future travels, do not recommend Wizz Air. The flight from London to Budapest through Wizz Air was delayed almost 2 hours. They had us just sitting in the plane for 2 hours. People were getting up, people were complaining. I heard a few people getting pretty upset, and honestly, I just felt really bad for the flight attendants because clearly it wasn't their fault, but they were getting a lot of angry passengers. But anyways, once I finally made it, today's main activity was doing a free Budapest walking tour. That's one of the great things about Europe. Most cities, they have all kinds of great free walking tours with local guides, and honestly, everywhere I've been in Europe where I've done a walking tour, the guide has been absolutely fantastic, very knowledgeable, and today was no exception. So, a little bit of background. Budapest was created by the union of three cities, Óbuda, Buda, and Pest, in 1873. And for anybody who speaks Hungarian, please forgive my pronunciation. I'm sure I'm butchering all of these. My apologies, working on it. Anyways, prior to it being officially dubbed Budapest, apparently it was called Pest Buda. Can't blame them for changing the name. The city is split in half by the Danube River. There's the Buda side and the Pest side. And as our guide was saying, the Buda side is kind of the richer, more luxurious side, and there's kind of a mini unofficial rivalry between the two sides. And as our guide said, the people who live on the Buda side like to say that the only reason to come to the Pest side is for the great view of the Buda side across the river. But as my guide also said, the Pest side is actually the interesting one. So guess we'll see. I'll have to do a little bit more exploring, and then I can weigh in and see if I agree or not. So during the tour, we walked around kind of the central part of the city and went by a couple of notable sites in Budapest, including the Budapest Parliament Building. As our guide pointed out, the Budapest Parliament Building did not have any chimneys, and this was apparently because the architect who built it did not want to ruin his masterpiece with smoke, so a facility that would heat the building was built nearby, and apparently this was one of the first buildings in Europe to employ this kind of heating technology, which I found interesting. And the Budapest Parliament Building is also home to the crown jewels, and during World War II, people were worried that the jewels would get looted and stolen. The jewels were first sent to Austria, then Germany, if I'm remembering correctly, and finally to the United States, where they were held in Fort Knox until 1978, when they were returned to Hungary by President Jimmy Carter. We also walked by St. Stephen's Basilica. St. Stephen was a king of Hungary, technically the last Grand Prince of the Hungarians from the year 997 to 1000, and then the first king of Hungary from 1000 to his death in 1083. In Hungary, his feast day is a national public holiday celebrated on August 20th, which celebrates the foundation of the state. Prior to King Stephen, Hungary was made up of largely pagan tribes, which caused some issues with the rest of Christian Europe. Originally, King Stephen was born with the pagan name of Vajk, and I'm probably definitely not pronouncing that correctly, but he took the name Stephen after he was baptized. King Stephen's primary concern during his reign was the transformation of Hungary into a Christian state to better fit in with the rest of Europe, And this was presumably not as straightforward and a bit more controversial than it might seem, as his death was followed by a long period of civil wars, pagan uprisings, and foreign invasions. Stephen was canonized in 1083, and as part of the canonization process, his body was exhumed, and according to our tour guide, legend has it that when his body was exhumed, his crypt smelled like roses. But like many legends, let's take that one with a grain of salt. But when they dug him up, however, his right hand was apparently perfectly mummified and preserved. So, of course, they chopped it off and saved it as a holy relic, like you do. And apparently, since it has been tested in more modern times and verified that it actually is St. Stephen's right hand, and it is now on display in St. Stephen's Basilica, I did not get the chance to go in, but hearing that fun fact, I mean, how can I miss that? And according to our guide, St. Stephen's is also home to the grave of another notable individual, though not necessarily somebody you would expect. Apparently, Ferenc Puskás, once again, I am probably not pronouncing that correctly, I'm very sorry, but Mr. Puskás was a legendary Hungarian football player. He was internationally renowned, captain of the Golden Team, and widely regarded as one of the greatest players of all time and one of the sport's first international superstars. And Hungary was so proud of his accomplishments that he was laid to rest under the dome of St. Stephen's, where his grave is now a popular tourist attraction. So I guess I'll check that out when I go to see St. Stephen's mummified right hand. We also stopped by a couple of historical monuments, both steeped in various controversies. One of them was this Holocaust monument dedicated to all of the victims of Hungary's German occupation. This monument depicts Hungary as the Archangel Gabriel being attacked by a German imperial eagle. And the controversy around this monument, which has been the subject of various protests and vandalism, it's said to be falsifying history because many of the Jews killed in Hungary during World War II were not actually killed by the actual Nazis, but by members of a Hungarian political party that supported the Nazis, which led many to say that the monument is falsifying the Holocaust and trying to absolve the Hungarian state of its crimes. Also, according to our guide, this monument was put up secretly in the middle of the night in 2014, almost like whoever put it up knew that it was going to be controversial. We also passed by this monument as well, which is in memoriam to the Soviet soldiers who died freeing Hungary from the Nazis. This monument carries a lot of mixed emotions, as the Soviets did kick the Nazis out, which was great. Nobody likes those assholes. But then the Soviets decided to stick around for their own occupation of Hungary. Maybe they just marched in and were like, screw those Nazis, but hey, finders keepers. The words on this monument are the really controversial part. In Russian it says, Slava Sovietsky Geroyami Osvoboditeлями, which means glory to the heroic Soviet liberators. And according to the tour guide, this doesn't really sit well with most Hungarians because while it does acknowledge the horrors of war and the Soviet contribution to getting rid of the Nazis, it paints the Soviets as heroic liberators, which many Hungarians would completely disagree with because of the oppressive Soviet regime and the horrors that followed. Our guide said that apparently many have tried and wanted to get rid of this monument, but it's in a protected diplomatic district, so no dice. This was a pretty great day one, good intro to some Hungarian history and good way to start getting a feel for the city, and I'm super excited to continue exploring more of Budapest. I'll definitely follow up when I get the chance to check out that mummified hand. So goodbye for now, or in Hungarian, once again, apologies for my pronunciation, Viszlát!